Emma Vigeland of TYT spoke to Trump voters about immigration. This should be a very interesting clip. Check it out.
Here in Arizona, immigration is obviously at the top of many Trump supporters' minds, and Tucker Carlson had a very interesting segment about how immigration, changing demographics are making the country more volatile.
In the year 2000, Hazleton's population was 2% Hispanic. Just 16 years later, Hazleton is majority Hispanic. Now, before you start calling anyone bigoted, consider and be honest, how would you feel if that happened in your neighborhood? This pace of change makes societies volatile, really volatile, just as ours has become volatile.
I wanted to see what these Trump supporters thought about that. So Tucker Carlson had this segment that went viral where he said that the changing demographics with more and more Latina people coming into the country, it's causing more volatility in the country. What are your thoughts on that?
Build the wall.
I think if they were Republican voters, they'd be stopped.
The Latinas at the border?
Yeah, I think, and I think 4,000 Latinas coming in less than a month before the midterm elections. It didn't just happen. It wasn't a grassroots overnight decision. I mean, it took some, planning and somebody's behind it.
What would solve the whole thing in the border if they would just start shooting? Only shoot a couple and they would go home.
You think deterrence would work?
If they would shoot.
I really feel like if the people from Mexico would come here and emerge into the American culture, but they really, I see it, they want to make America part of Mexico. And I'm opposed to that.
I would love the demographics to change if they came here legally. It would be fine. I'd welcome them. Yeah, I'd welcome them. We have to keep track of everybody coming in here to avoid another 9/11. You can't just let people run across border. So I'd welcome them. I'd love to help them. I'd love to hire them if they came here legally.
9/11, they were just Saudi Arabians coming, not through immigration, but it's
the whole policy that's the problem.
No one that I know that supports Trump wants that division. I think that Tucker Carlson takes a really, edgy stance on things in order to, rile up a crowd generally, and people like to watch that.
White people don't produce enough children. If you look at the demographics, they have abortion and the blacks. So when you do that, you need population growth. You need roughly 1.6 or more in order for the economy to grow. And since we're not producing enough, or we are aborting them, so you have no other choice except to bring in new blood and young people, and the Europeans are not coming over, so what's left is what you see.
So a lot of these people are fleeing horrific political situations themselves and seeking asylum. You still think that we should shoot?
If they just shot at them a few times, they would go back.
The rule of law needs to supersede all these emotions. Yes, there's emotions. And, you want to focus on separation of families. And we know there's strategies where they bring children. That's a strategy. But truly, come the legal way. Come the legal way. And we have hearts. We absolutely have hearts. But don't step in front of people who have done it the right way.
That was absolutely fascinating. So there's a lot to say about this. My first question is, which ones were bigoted and which ones aren't? And I do think that there's a conversation to be had there. I think that as a general rule, people on the right will say none of those people were bigoted, and people on the left will say every one of those people is bigoted. So, and I actually think the truth is somewhere in the middle, and you'd have to go person by person to determine which ones are actually bigoted and not bigoted. So there was one guy who was like, hey, listen, I'm totally fine with demographic change. I just want people to come in here legally. I would argue that guy's not bigoted. Because he's saying demographic change is basically a non-issue, and I think that most people believe demographic change is not really an issue. And in fact, I think 75% of Americans are in favor of immigration. So most people are in agreement with that guy that demographic change isn't an issue. So I don't think he's bigoted, and I think that it's unfair to say that everybody on the right, or everybody, period, take politics out of it, who says, hey, I think we should have legal immigration and not illegal immigration, I don't think that that is simply a dog whistle. And I don't think that that's simply like, hey, everybody who says they support legal immigration but not illegal immigration, they're coded racists and they're just trying to hide it. I don't agree with that. So that guy, I would say, is probably not a bigot based on what his comments were there. Now, there are other ones where that's not the case. So the obvious one who I think it's fair to call him a bigot is the shoot them guy. And, I mean, listen, you'd have to ask him directly to get the exact answer here, but I suspect that if Emma said, hey, what about if refugees from, I don't know, Sweden were getting off a plane coming into the U.S., would you say that we should shoot them because they're illegal? Would you say that if somebody was crossing the border from Canada into the U.S., that when they cross that Canadian border into the U.S., that we should shoot them immediately so that we prevent more Canadians from coming into the U.S.? Because my suspicion is that he would be like, no, why would I shoot the Canadian or the Swedish person or any European person? In his mind, it's these, dirty brown people coming from the South, and we gotta send a message, and we gotta let them know you can't come, so shoot them. So, and even putting aside the race aspect of it, the comments on their own merit, even if he would answer, yeah, I would shoot somebody coming from Canada or Europe or whatever, it's insane no matter what. That's an insane thing to believe. Just like a crime of that level, like, coming into a country illegally. And by the way, many people who cross to get into this country, they're just seeking asylum, and they're going to go through the proper steps in order to try to get asylum and be granted asylum because they're escaping some sort of drug war violence, or their family's about to get killed for reasons X, Y, or Z. And it's a crime all over the place in their home country. So the idea that, just shoot them when they come here, I mean, that is just some absolutely positively close-minded, selfish, backwards, ignorant, genocidal garbage is what that is. So that guy is probably a bigot, and he's certainly bloodthirsty, and he doesn't believe in human rights. Then there's the woman who says, I think that Mexico has a plot to make the U.S. Mexican, to make the U.S. Mexico again. It's funny to me that these kinds of things keep other people up at night. Because for somebody like me, I look at climate change, the fact that we might have a 7-degree temperature increase by the year 2100, and we're going to have drought, we're going to have famine, the cost of goods is going to shoot through the roof, increased natural disasters, wars over water, a giant refugee crisis where the Middle East is going to empty and they have to leave because it's too hot for humans to live there. Stuff like climate change keeps me up. Stuff like insane levels that you can't even wrap your mind around of income inequality and wealth inequality, where the people from the Walmart family, 6 people, have more wealth than the bottom 40 or 45% of Americans combined, where the richest 6 people on earth have more wealth than the bottom 50% combined, where half of workers in America make $30,000 a year or less, where corruption has gotten to the point where corporations and billionaires rig the rules in their favor and screw over Americans, where we have 32 to 45,000 people that die every year because they don't have access to basic health care. These are real issues that drive me crazy and keep me up at night. And then there's somebody somewhere in the country who's sitting up going, I can't believe Mexico is going to try to take back over the United States. That's just frustrating. And then he says, there's one guy who says white people don't create enough children. I don't even, again, if you ask these people, hey, do you think you're bigoted? I think they would be like, no. But then they'll go on to say stuff like white people don't create enough children. What? Why does that matter? Who's creating children and who's not creating children? If you actually believe human beings are equal, then you just think humans are humans and, whatever. It doesn't matter if we have more, Hispanic kids born one year and white kids born another year and black kids born another year. It would just be like, we're all humans. But there's a real concern that he has, we need to breed more. White people need to breed more. And by the way, that is, I think, the main claim of the people who are concerned about white genocide is that they say, it's that white people are not having enough kids and other ethnic groups are outpacing in terms of having kids, and this is going to create a problem because of... So this seems to be the concern among that crowd, and I think he doesn't even realize that he probably is in league with the alt-right. He would say, no, I'm not, but that's kind of what his concern is. And then there was the person at the end who said, rule of law supersedes emotions. Now, I thought that was a really interesting one because these are overwhelmingly people at this rally would describe themselves as Christian. And I don't know if that woman specifically is Christian, but if I had to bet, I'd say she would call herself a Christian. And it's just funny to me that there can be this much compartmentalizing. And we see this with Pat Robertson when he was like, I care deeply about the $100 billion Saudi weapons deal after Jamal Khashoggi was killed. It's like, no, you're supposed to be the Christian dude. Aren't you supposed to be the one who's like, we need to care about morality and fuck the weapons deal? It's not like Jesus was, back in the day, was out there like, and thine shall care deeply about thine weapons deals. No, it's not what they're about. And on the issue of immigration specifically, I know because we've covered the stories, the Bible's overwhelmingly pro-immigration. All the time, everything is like open your door to your brethren and to the sojourner and treat them like they're your own family. And they just ignore it because their politics overrides their theology. And that's not to say you can't get right-wing politics from the Bible, because you can. You can get any ideology you want from the Bible. But it's interesting because on this one specific issue, immigration, I don't see two sides in there. I just see it's all pro-immigration shit in the New Testament. It's all pro-refugee, sojourner, the other. So it's just they throw it out the window for politics, and they don't even realize they do it. And it's really weird to see. And then finally, you had one of the women who was like, they're all coming in here because they want to vote. The idea that's like they're trying to cross a desert and not die. The idea that they get here and they're like, all right, where can I go cast a ballot? That's nonsense. They can't even vote. They can't vote. And in fact, there's been studies on this. Voter fraud is almost a total non-issue. Again, study speaking, not me. You're more likely to get struck by lightning than there is to be voter fraud. But what isn't an issue? Election fraud. And when you talk about election fraud, look at the disenfranchisement that Republicans are doing, where they do all these fucking dirty tricks and they, find a way to kick people off the voting rolls, people who are poor, people who are, people of color, because they know they're overwhelmingly likely to vote Democratic. So they find ways to purge the voter rolls. Again, this isn't my opinion. This is what's in the news. These are the facts of the matter. So it's just amazing how they invert everything. It's like, oh my God, the problem is the voter fraud, and that's why the Democrats are going to win. Oh, what's that? The Republicans are purging the rolls of Democrats so that they can cheat and win? Oh, let's not talk about that. It's so childish and it's so silly. In conclusion, I do think that the left should be more nuanced about this stuff and say, okay, let's not just call everybody a bigot who has a different opinion on immigration. Let's hear them out. But then, yes, after you hear them out, you can make judgments. The guy who said white people don't create enough children, it's fair to call him likely bigoted. It's fair to call the person who said shoot them bigoted. And at the very least, if you're not comfortable saying bigoted, bloodthirsty. Fucking murder people just because they're crossing a border. I mean, that's like jaywalking's a crime, so they need to be punished, so shoot them. What? What about the level of crime we're talking about here? Are you crazy? So it's fair to call out that guy. The only one I would pump the brakes on is the one who said, hey man, listen, I don't even care about demographic change. As long as they come in here legally, that's fine. So there are people who are concerned about process and organization, and I think there's a more nuanced conversation to be had with those people. But the people who are more concerned about demographic changes, and fucking shooting them on the spot, and Mexico's trying to take back over the U.S., those are the people who you could say, you're a little too far gone and you're bigoted, and you're not going to have a reasonable conversation with those people. You're more likely to have a reasonable conversation with that one guy who seemed much more nuanced in his comments.